But now Bitcoin has kind of gone sideways. It went up to 109,000, it dropped to 92, it's gone back over 100, it dropped back below 100. It's kind of sitting around $95,000 to $100,000. And I see a lot of Bitcoiners getting bored. I see them starting to get antsy. They're worried, is the bull market over? What's going on? Everyone calm down, take a deep breath. If you have a finite supply with a constricted circulating supply and demand, like country level liquidity starts to come into the market, you should expect a much higher price point. Now, how high is that? Is that 120,000, 150,000, 200,000? I don't know. That's for you all to decide. You guys are all smarter than me. But I do think that we get a much higher price. And so to me, that's the single most important thing is Bitcoin will have officially climbed all the way up the hill of critics if the United States embraces it.
Bitcoin's meteoric rise in 2024 has been nothing short of historic. Starting the year at around $40,000, the approval of Bitcoin ETF fueled an incredible rally, pushing the price past $100,000, a major psychological milestone for investors and enthusiasts alike. Bitcoiners celebrated their long-awaited redemption as critics who doubted its potential were proven wrong. However, as the euphoria settled, Bitcoin's price action turned sideways, fluctuating between $92,000 and $109,000, often dipping below and then climbing back toward the six-figure mark. This market stagnation has led to uncertainty among investors, with many asking, is the bull market over, or is Bitcoin simply taking a breather before its next leg up? In this analysis, Anthony Pompliano provides crucial insights into market sentiment, historical trends, and the macroeconomic factors at play, offering a much-needed perspective on what lies ahead for Bitcoin.
Please take a little time to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. You can also check out our other videos on cryptocurrencies and the overall digital asset space and drop your comments and observations in the comments section below. Everything you do helps with the YouTube algorithm and immensely contributes to the channel's growth. Thanks and enjoy the video.
So we know that Bitcoin started 2024 around $40,000. The ETFs got approved and Bitcoin skyrocketed throughout the year. It went to $100,000. It's a really big milestone. Everyone was super excited about it. And obviously Bitcoiners felt like they had been on this redemption curve. They were right. All the critics were wrong. Bitcoin at 100K felt like a psychological moment. But now Bitcoin has kind of gone sideways. It went up to 109,000, it dropped to 92, it's gone back over 100, it dropped back below 100. It's kind of sitting around $95,000 to $100,000. And I see a lot of Bitcoiners getting bored. I see them starting to get antsy. They're worried, is the bull market over? What's going on? Everyone calm down, take a deep breath. But here's my word of caution, is that a lot of the activity we're seeing in meme coins and elsewhere, this is short-term speculation. This is people saying, I don't want to think long-term. There's a void of focus and discipline. And so I'm going to go play in meme coin land, or I'm going to go play in these other assets. Instead, you got to stay focused. And so what this really tells me is that there's a bifurcation of both conviction and information in the market. Now, what do I mean by that? It means that there's some people who are short-term oriented. They're simply looking at what is the daily price? What else is going on in the market? What's the shiny new thing? That's where their information bucket is they're filling it with as much shiny things as possible. Then there's a whole nother bucket of people who are long-term information oriented. They're thinking about what is the price today? What do I think the price is going to be in 5 or 10 years? What do I think is the true value of a decentralized digital asset that provides sovereignty and censorship resistant to anyone in the world that wants to protect their economic value? That is a long-term thinker. That's a very different information source than the people who are short-term oriented and just looking at what the latest shiny thing is. And so what that leads me to is right now is actually some of the most interesting times of Bitcoin. Now, why is it interesting to me? It's interesting whenever a lot of people start to get bearish or they start to get lulled to sleep, because usually what I have seen in my time in evaluating this asset and paying attention and holding it is that is the moment when we start to get to a point where then Bitcoin will erupt in either direction. People are lulled to sleep. They don't think anything's going to happen. And bam, we go in either direction. Now, it could be down or it could be up. In this case, I actually think one of the best indicators as to why the price likely goes up rather than down is that we have seen an incredible persistent bid in the market every time Bitcoin has gone to correct. If you go back to 2017 and in 2020, 2021, Every time we had these bull markets, Bitcoin would correct 30% or more a couple of times during the cycle. So obviously in 2017, there was like 5 or 6 different corrections to 30% or more. In 2021, we actually saw a 50% correction after a 50% correction in 2020. So COVID, 50% correction in a single day for Bitcoin. And then in May of 2021, we saw that there was a 50% correction after the China ban of Bitcoin mining. And so you had 2 50% corrections in 2 years. Crazy. Most assets, you can never go through that. But what have we seen so far? We have gotten some 15% drawdowns. We've gotten some, what I would say, definitely drawdowns, but they're not 30%. They're not 40, 50%. And so what that means is as Bitcoin is trying to cool off and correct, which is very healthy in a bull market, there's actually such a persistent bid. There's so many people that want to buy Bitcoin that what you're seeing is you're seeing people step in almost immediately and say, hey, I'm not going to let it fall below some price. Doesn't mean it can't happen. Doesn't mean that it can't continue to go down before it goes back up. But it does signal that there is a very healthy demand for Bitcoin. And I think that's where you see the price having gone up so much. Look, anytime an asset goes from $40,000 to $100,000 in 12 months, it's got to cool off a little bit. It's hot, it's very hot. So let the thing go ahead and cool off. Let it go sideways. Don't be lulled to sleep. It will eventually be just fine. If you go ahead and you take a look, Bitcoin still 1 out of every 2 Bitcoin in circulation has not moved in 2 years. Very important. Bitcoiners are not selling. And so whenever you have a finite supply with a constricted circulating supply and that illiquidity, and then you get increased demand, it's gangbusters. And so what I think is the single most important thing for Bitcoin right now is the strategic Bitcoin reserve. If we get the strategic Bitcoin reserve, we go much higher very quickly. I also think that what you are going to see is the full penetration of Bitcoin into many countries, maybe not all, but many countries, balance sheet or sovereign wealth funds if the United States does it. Why? Go back to 2020. If you remember, Paul Tudor Jones, Stanley Druckenmiller came out and they said that they owned Bitcoin. When they said that they owned Bitcoin, what we saw was that a ton of other people on Wall Street said, well, it's good enough for the goats. It's good enough for me. Well, America's the goat of countries when it comes to finances. They are seen as the leader. They are able to issue US treasuries. The dollar is the global reserve currency. The US has the greatest capital markets, the most liquidity, the most popularity, etc. And so if the United States decides that they're going to do it, other countries, they're going to say, hey, we might want to get on this train as well. And so naturally the game theory plays out. I do think the United States will do it and other countries will follow. If you have a finite supply with a constricted circulating supply and demand, like country level liquidity starts to come into the market, you should expect a much higher price point. Now, how high is that? Is that 120,000, 150,000, 200,000? I don't know. That's for you all to decide. You guys are all smarter than me. But I do think that we get a much higher price. And so to me, that's the single most important thing is Bitcoin will have officially climbed all the way up the hill of critics if the United States embraces it.
Correlation between gold and Bitcoin. Over the past year, gold has surged nearly 50%, reaching close to $3,000 per ounce. This is significant because gold is traditionally seen as a stable, low volatility asset. Its recent rally indicates that investors are seeking protection against inflation and economic uncertainty. Despite official inflation figures suggesting a modest 3% annual increase, the rapid rise in gold, stocks, and Bitcoin tells a different story.
Why am I bullish? Well, obviously there's lulling. 2, we've got the administration that is very pro-Bitcoin. 3, I think, is that Bitcoin is transitioning from something that the mainstream media used to critique and attack and say, hey, this is stupid. These guys and girls are all going to destroy capital, etc. Now, mainstream media seems pretty interested. They're not full-on bulls. They're not going to go out and write articles about Bitcoin is the greatest thing since sliced bread. But I do think that they have now transitioned from a negative viewpoint to maybe a cautiously optimistic viewpoint. Hey, these people might be onto something. This may work. This thing may actually end up being what these people said it was going to be. I see the government talking about it. I remember they were saying that in the early 2010s, that the government was going to eventually like Bitcoin. It wasn't going to ban Bitcoin. The best results and the best track record is winning. And that's right now what Bitcoin's been doing. Bitcoin has been fulfilling the prophecy that it came from many of the early Bitcoiners. So the media is now having to say, well, look, the results speak for themselves. I got to pay attention to this thing. And so that is a huge kind of green flag, very bullish, is that now some of the most ardent critics, they're softening. Doesn't mean that they're going to become fans, but they're just softening, which is very important. What's fascinating to me is the backdrop of all this is gold is also going up. Gold has been up 50% year over year. It's about to hit $3,000. That's crazy. Gold, which is usually seen as something that is not that volatile, is up 50%. Now, why is that important? Well, the government data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics is telling you that inflation is 3% year over year for January. So from 2024 to 2025, January to January, inflation was 3%. Do you believe that? I don't know. I don't. Why? Well, the money supply grew 5% in 2024. So if inflation is only 3%, but the money supply grew 5%, those two numbers don't add up. Then if you add in the fact the stock market was up 25%, Bitcoin was up 100%, gold was up 50%. Why did gold get more valuable? What happened? It's not like the gold bar changed. It's not like some chemist figured out some unique element that they introduced to the gold that made it more valuable. 50%? There's probably a lot of people who are worried about inflation and other kind of chaotic, uncertain events. They're driving more demand for gold. It went up 50% in 12 months. These are the types of things you got to pay attention to. Is you can't be kind of siloed, laser focused, only looking at Bitcoin. Bitcoin operates within a global financial system. And if you're a long-term holder of Bitcoin, you can simply just continue to dollar cost average, accumulate as much Bitcoin as possible. But you got to pay attention. You got to look at these other things. Gold goes up 50%. What's interesting about that is that gold usually leads Bitcoin. When gold goes up, Bitcoin goes up slightly a little bit later. Why? They're many of the same drivers. Why are people buying it? Both of them are outside the system. Both of them are sound money principles. Neither one of them can be actually printed by somebody else. Anytime you get this kind of asset outside of the system, sound money principles, they are very related in what the drivers of liquidity for them are. So if gold went up 50%, Bitcoin went up 100%, gold has continued to run while Bitcoin's been going sideways. I think those two trends will come back in kind of harmony, and you'll see Bitcoin's price go up. And one of the things that I think people don't give enough credit for is it's not just how early you find Bitcoin or how early you bought Bitcoin. It is how consistent or how hard you press your conviction. This is true of all assets. So if you go and you find a great stock and you think that if I buy it today, it's going to go up, that's great. But you may only have so much money, and so you go and you buy it. But if you never buy another share, then you're only limited to what that initial purchase was. Obviously, if you've got conviction and you continue to buy the stock and you're dollar cost averaging into the stock, you're likely to end up with way more shares. And even if the stock price was going up, because you have so many shares, then that price appreciation ends up helping you make more money. So your first dollar, let's say you made 10x. Your second dollar, you made 9.5x. Your third dollar, you only made 9x. 9x is still pretty good, and continue down that trend, right? Doubling down, tripling down, pressing your winners is really important. I remember one time I asked Mark Yusko, who was an LP in a bunch of great investors' funds, I said, what separates the top 1% from the top 20%? And he said to me, it's very simple. The best investors in the world, they press their winners harder than anyone else, and they sell their losers faster than anyone else. Press your winners, sell your losers. And so naturally, Bitcoin is a great example of this. Many of the people I know who have accumulated an immense amount of Bitcoin, yes, some of them found Bitcoin in 2010, but they continued to acquire more Bitcoin. Others found Bitcoin in 2020. Look at MicroStrategy. Literally, 2020 was their first purchase. They now have almost 2% of the total supply. And so why is it? It's pressing your winners. Conviction, continuing to accumulate. Now, that doesn't mean that you go do something undisciplined or you lose emotional control. It just means that you can't get lulled to sleep. You can't get sidetracked. And so being able to understand what is Bitcoin, has the thesis changed? Why is the price going sideways? Everyone relax, take a deep breath. It's going to be fine.
Pompliano references insights from legendary investor Mark Yusko, who emphasizes that the top investors double down on their winning positions and exit losing trades swiftly. In the case of Bitcoin, those who continue to accumulate and hold through market fluctuations tend to outperform those who try to time the market. A prime example of this strategy is MicroStrategy, which began accumulating Bitcoin in 2020 and now owns nearly 2% of the total supply. By maintaining conviction and strategically adding to its position, MicroStrategy has positioned itself as one of the largest corporate holders of Bitcoin. This approach highlights the importance of long-term vision and disciplined accumulation. Please like and subscribe.